Well, as everyone can see, I am back here in the kitchen in Alabama. My wife and I are actually gearing up to move to Texas, which is another story altogether. But I thought what I would do is share with you just a little bit about our experience flying back here to the United States. There were a few mishaps and things like that along the way. If you've been watching this channel and watching the trip to the Philippines, you know that Mary Chris and I flew into the Clark Airport, and we do not regret that decision. That made it really nice to avoid Manila coming into the Philippines. But when we were flying back to the United States, we went ahead and took the Manila Airport. Now, what we did is we were at our hotel there in Angeles City, and the flight left, I think, at 7 or maybe 8 o'clock, something like that. And we just decided that what we would do is leave Angeles City at about 1 a.m. and catch a bus and then catch a taxi, knowing that we may be at the airport a bit early, but that we would rather be there early than be there too late. Because with Manila, you can get traffic, flooding, all kind of stuff. So we just decided to catch a bus to get there. We were actually thinking about renting a private car or private taxi to go to Manila, but we just could not arrange that before in time. If I had a little bit more time, probably would have been able to do that. There are taxis at the bus station there in Manila, at the Dao bus station. We're always trying to pick up people and go to Manila. But for me, we thought about doing that, but for me, the thing is, those are just kind of shady. You don't know who it is actually that's driving you. You don't. It's not an official taxi. You don't know if they're going to try to break every speed record going into Manila. So we just hopped on a bus, got to Manila, went to Cubao. Once you get down at Cubao, if you get there early in the morning, like 2 or 3 a.m., about 2:30, 3 a.m. is when we got there. The supply and demand is on your side, so there are plenty of taxis looking for passengers. We did make a mistake in that we went to Terminal 1, and now over the past 2 to 3 years, Delta now exclusively deals with Terminal 3. So we went to Terminal 1, not knowing this because it's the one I'd always used. No big deal because we still had plenty of time. We did have an issue in that the security guard at Terminal 1 called over a taxi driver, and that taxi driver tried to completely rip us off. And I got a reasonable price finally once I told him he either goes way down on the price or he can let us off on the street and we'll find another taxi. He was wanting to charge me something like 30 US dollars to go from Terminal 1 to Terminal 3. And needless to say, I was grumpy. I hadn't had any sleep, so I let him know exactly what I thought of that price, and we got a more reasonable price. Wasn't a great price, but at least it wasn't $30. I think I paid him 500 peso, which is about $10 or $12. Still way too much, but I didn't have a lot of smaller peso bills with me. So if I'd only had 300 peso, if I'd had about 300 or 400 peso with me, that's what I would have paid him. But I had larger bills, so that was about a 500 peso mistake. We got to Terminal 3, and we got there a bit early, and they said that Delta does not check in until 5 a.m. We thought we would have to wait a couple of hours because at this point it was before 4 a.m. But around 4:15 a.m. they started checking everyone in. So that's what happened on the way back. A couple of other things that I'll mention to you, and these are things that you've probably heard other people on YouTube talk about. You have two different fees when you're exiting the Philippines that you have to be aware of. One is the travel tax that is imposed on most foreigners. So if you go on a tourist visa and then you leave the Philippines, you're going to get stuck with a travel tax of around 3,000 peso, a little bit under 3,000 peso, I believe. I did not have to pay travel tax because I was using a balikbayan visa. So It's just good to know that what's on paper is what actually happens. You do not have to pay the travel tax with a balikbayan visa. But another thing that interesting that I learned is that another thing you have to deal with when flying around in the Philippines is a terminal fee. And I believe the terminal fee is about 750 peso. I've heard people say it's 550, but I think it's 750. And I was also prepared to pay that on my way out of Manila, but apparently that's included in the ticket now, or I've looked it up, and starting in 2015, what they've done is they've somehow made it to where you don't pay the terminal fee when you are exiting the airports in Manila, exiting the country. Now, apparently, you still have to pay it when you're going from other airports, when you're leaving from other airports, or when you're flying from one airport to another within the country. But those are just some things that kind of surprised me about our exit. So I thought I would just share that with everyone. One final thing, and this is just something for your information. What I usually try to do is when I'm flying back to the United States, I tend to just stay up the whole night before. That way, once we actually get on the plane, we're ready to sleep and kind of at least get your body somewhat readjusted to the new time zone that you're going to be living in. And we did that. We could barely stay awake by the time we were going to in Terminal 3 waiting to get on that flight going to Japan. We were really tired, and I don't think either one of us even remembers the plane taking off to go to Japan. We got on the flight to go to Japan. That's the route we took coming back to the United States, by the way, on Delta through Japan. And we got on that plane, and both of us just woke up a couple of hours later when they were giving us a snack or a juice or whatever. But just thought I would share a few of the things that I learned on our way back, a few things that have changed since I have last been to the Philippines. And overall, it went pretty smoothly. We had that little mishap with Terminal 1 versus Terminal 3. And, it was being in the Philippines as long as I was, the issue with the taxi driver. I've been there and done that. So, we ended up paying that taxi driver 200 or 300 peso more than I normally would have if I'd been fully prepared and had smaller bills. But overall, that wasn't a big deal. So I just thought I would share that with everyone. And we're now back here in Alabama, as I've mentioned. I may try to share some of the things that have come to my mind since that the trip has reminded me of over the next few days. But we're kind of busy, so we'll just see.